Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB bikini pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Our next coach has had a passion for fitness and health since he was young, since his dad and he created their own gym, which sparked a passion for lifting, much like his father's passion. He has been a power lifter and nationally qualified bodybuilder himself. He turned his love of lifting into a career, training at a local YMCA in 2002 with his ISSA certification. And as his client base grew, he founded See You Later Leader in Columbus, Ohio, to provide proper nutrition on top of training. He has been coined the diet doc of his town and works with people from all walks of life and, of course, competitors. His success in the NPC, IFBB, and even other federations has led to many top placings, pro cards, and ultimately dream making, which is his true goal and passion in what he does. So welcome to the show, Adam Atkinson. How are you doing?
I'm great. It's a really, really good pleasure to be on here. So thank you for having me.
Of course. I'm so happy to have you on. Like I told you before we hit record, I listened to you on Ryan Hinton's podcast, and me and Ryan have connected a lot since I had him on the coaches series. And I just think you are so genuine and so real about your approach. And when you were on his podcast, I think too, I want to guide people to maybe check that episode out as well from Ryan, because it was so vulnerable and real. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. So I'm excited to talk to you more specifically about your approach, kind of do like interview style. And I always like to start these off by going, what is your coaching philosophy? How would you describe it?
So one way I like to kind of sum it up, I like to almost call myself like the hospice of dieting. So I try to make this as possible. Now, there's going to come a time and place where this sport does get extreme, but I do want to have a gentle hand as much as possible with my clients, understand what they're going through, and just be there for them. Prep's hard, and I want to make it as easy, in quotes, possible.
Yes, I love that. And I think that's like the best way of going about it, is a way that's going to be enjoyable for the athlete. And I actually just interviewed Brittany Hamilton, and I've talked to Lauren a few times, of course. And Brittany was raving about your journey together. And she said you guys have done different approaches. And I think that really supports your philosophy about being adaptive, about being empathetic and supporting the athlete and having their best experience, which she said she's had. So how is it that you approach, like with specific athletes? You said sometimes you have to kind of be the hospice and clean things up. So how do you approach prioritizing health with your athletes?
Well, a lot of people are going to have a lot of different health markers that maybe need to be addressed, and you really do want to be individual in your approach. Not everyone's going to need the same vitamins or minerals. Not everyone's going to need a joint supplement. And, to be honest, if somebody's got achy joints, I'm not just going to mask it with a joint supplement. Like, what is the cause? Is it a certain exercise? Is it the frequency of training? Having issues after addressing that, then let's add, maybe some vitamins and minerals to take care of that. But, each person is definitely very different. And, lab work can be huge, which I know we're going to talk about down the road here, but they're really just treating people as individuals. It's actually funny that you mentioned Brittany, because Brittany, I was trying to be very gentle with our first prep together, and one of our biggest turning points was she would be great about dieting Monday through Friday, and she would kind of blow it on the weekends. And I kind of said, this girl needs to see a really fast change to get her kind of like addicted to the results. So I basically did a phone call with her and said, you've got 12 weeks to do Pittsburgh Pro. And like, I'm literally slashing your calories to here because I think it'll get you motivated and excited about the process. And that's actually complete opposite of what I would say I typically do. But after that second week, I think she was down like 8 pounds, and she was addicted to the results at that point.
Yeah, sometimes we need to like build that efficacy that the results that we're going to get are possible, but we need to prove that we're capable of creating them by actually seeing them come out. And it can provide great like proof as you were able to pick up on as a need for hers. And that actually makes me wonder how you determine how far to push an athlete, given, that's not your usual approach you said, but given some circumstances it is. So how do you determine that?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things is, a lot of people talk about this being calories in and calories out, but hormones are super important. So, unfortunately, the thermodynamics only work in a healthy body. So the biggest thing is making sure that that body is healthy to begin with. If you're just in a state of like sympathetic or hormonal dysfunction, you're just going to fight yourself the whole way. So a lot of what I do is, if the athlete grants me enough time, is before the prep. So I would say like the pre-prep or the off season, making sure we get calories high to a certain extent, making sure that we're resting enough and recovered. And then we have some really nice strut in the step for prep to begin. And then we also have a really hormonally optimized body to do so.
That's so interesting. And I'm really glad you brought that up because that's got to be one of my biggest pet peeves is this whole like promotion of calories in, calories out all the time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like if it was actually that simple all the time for everyone, like there'd be so many more people who aren't struggling. But as you've pointed out, there's a lot more beyond surface level. So when you say you run like panels or you're requesting lab work, how do you know like what to look out for or what to maybe recommend girls get tested so you can make sure that they're in a good position to diet effectively?
Yeah. So you essentially do want to look at the hormones. The biggest things, if we want to go really basic, I would say thyroid, progesterone, estrogen, DHEA. Those are going to be really good to look at. And then even with women, you do want to look at testosterone as well. Sometimes people can get high androgens, and that could maybe lead me to think they have PCOS or something like that. Or they're just at a really sympathetic state still. You'll actually see girls who finish really hard contest preps and they have really high androgens. But I'm glad you mentioned that the calories in and calorie out thing is really mind boggling because, yeah, you can keep pulling calories and you can keep adding cardio. And this is the unfortunate thing is some of our most extreme and competitive athletes will do this. And they might eventually get there, but it doesn't mean it's going to end in the best result. And, that's what we're here for, is that best result. So, yeah, you can put someone on an 800 calorie diet, but it might take them forever to get there. And also, how much muscle are they going to have? And also, are they going to have such high cortisol levels that they just don't even look that great once they hit the stage?
Yes. Oh, I love those considerations. Like it's not just about getting them there. It's about really having, like you said earlier, the best experience. And of course, even a healthy experience, one that is balanced and considerate. You've brought up the term sympathetic a few times. Can you explain what that would maybe look or feel like for an athlete so they could tune in to see if they might be having issues there?
Yeah, so a sympathetic state is basically a state of stress. So that's parasympathetic is where you want to be. Now, obviously, when we're in a contest prep, we are going to experience some stress. And I don't want people to think that, this is going to be easy and we're going to be at parasympathetic sympathetic state the whole time. But when you're in such a sympathetic state, you're going to have really high cortisol levels. You're probably going to be sore quite often, just not recovering. And this is where just sometimes taking some multiple rest days, some multiple refeed days, maybe even this is why diet breaks are so popular. It's getting you out of that sympathetic state and just allowing you to increase thyroid levels. When you actually lower cortisol levels, you actually give yourself a chance to increase progesterone, because a lot of times when you're in prep, cortisol gets so high it kind of taps out. Well, then your body has to harvest progesterone to do so. And that's where we start getting that progesterone steal and estrogen dominance, which hormonally really affects the whole contest prep. So this is why the diet breaks are so important. I don't think a lot of coaches go into detail on, why we're doing these things.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I was like, you hear people talk about take a diet break, take more rest days, but you don't hear always the reason why. Maybe it's, and I don't want to like throw stones, but maybe it's like mimicry, or maybe it's like, oh, this seems to work kind of a thing. But I really appreciate that you're breaking down why that is and where that's coming from. And I think that there's, that kind of concern as well in the industry, like how do you know if your coach is doing the right thing for you, or how do you determine if you need more rest or if you are in a state that is stressful? And I would love if you could share with us what you think some girls should look out for before deciding to hire someone, or maybe questions you wish potential clients would ask you or not ask you.
Yeah. Well, first, I would want to make sure that they're versed in talking about these things. Do they do labs? And if they do labs, do they just come back and say, these are okay? Because honestly, when you're looking at hormonal ranges, they're going to show all the way into the menopausal ranges. So you could have a 0 progesterone level and your doctor is going to say that's normal. Where, if you're a 24-year-old female, that is not the case. So making sure that the coach is well versed. I would ask current clients, how hands on is your coach? How big do they dive in terms of what they look at? I would also look at similarities. I'm sponsored by Core Nutritionals, and I'm not giving all of my people the same supplements, or we even use outside vitamins and minerals. I'm not giving my clients these things because I have a code. I'm giving them these things because they're helpful and they're going to benefit them during the prep. And one of the great things about Core is I've actually spoke to them about a lot of the things that we've used, and they've added them as commodity products for me. But other things that I would look for is just the person being genuine, and do they listen to you? I think that you can tell a lot with just an initial interview with a coach. I think if a coach isn't willing to jump on a phone call to sign on, that's a really big red flag. And it's really nice to have conversations with people. I just had a girl the other day, we were on the phone call and she was buying a really, really low quality fish oil. It was a see-through bottle, and essentially fish oil exposed to light can oxidize, and it can go rancid. So just upon me educating her on that, she was like, I definitely want to hire you.
Yeah. Definitely. I like that. It's like the devil's in the details, right? And being considerate of all the possible variables that could be impacting someone's success or someone's health or someone's journey that they're choosing to go down with you. And you had, talked about some things I think that make a good coach within that. But what do you feel makes a really solid team or a good team?
That's a great question, because there's definitely been people that weren't great fits for me, and I do think that there has to be that you guys have to jive well for sure. And I think people communicate differently. I definitely don't have two clients that are alike, and it's it's very interesting how different clients will communicate different things. And sometimes you have to open the door just a little bit more than just that initial email. Um, when someone says, I'm sore, that could mean a lot of different things. I purely believe that women have a better pain tolerance than men do. And sometimes you have to say, well, when you say sore, what are you feeling and how painful are we talking? And, really dive in from there. And a lot of different terms can mean a lot of different things for other people. I still, to this day, I give my clients refeeds, and on a rare occasion, to some people, a refeed definitely means a cheat meal to them. And so sometimes even just the perceived language of what we're talking about just gets misinformed down the pipeline. So I think just explaining things and just good communication and good listening will really keep people jiving together for years to come.
I really love how you said that. It's almost like having your own dictionary as a coach. Like, okay, what does this mean to you? Especially, I'm sure that comes in handy with girls who have had past experiences or maybe work as a coach themselves. And I think that you're spot on with like the communication being so key. And I know personally, like I've struggled with that, like the aspect of making it clear what I'm feeling and how, detrimental assumptions can be. Like if I'm like, oh, I'm very sore, like I'm only saying that if I am actually like dying, like sore, not like, oh, my bicep hurts a little. So I think you make a really great point there. And, this kind of branches into the idea of like good athletes and then phenomenal athletes. And I think if you have a really solid relationship with your client, they're probably going to be, even more successful. But what do you think is the difference between a good athlete and then that winning champion athlete?
Yeah, I think that good athletes can have shiny object syndrome a little bit, and then phenomenal athletes really keep their head down and focus pretty well. Um, uh, good athletes will let noise get to them, and phenomenal athletes really have blinders on. And to go into more detail like that, I think that a lot of good athletes they look for the next best pre-workout or the next best supplement to get them there, or maybe even the next best coach, even when things are working relatively well for them. um, Phenomenal athletes stick to the tried and true, and they really um, just have a good maturity about them. And I'll also say this is just such a subjective sport. It's not uncommon. I've had it happen. I've had girls get last call outs at a national show, and then they get their pro card the next show they compete at. But I can also say I've had people get last call outs and they leave me, and all I need to do is tweak them just a little bit more to get them the rest of the way there. And definitely not putting the blame on them by any means, because for whatever reason they did choose to leave. But I feel like, man, we put so much work together. Like, please just let me tweak things a little bit and give you a better outcome.
I'm so glad that you said that because that was something that I really appreciated you bringing up on your other podcast interviews. And something that was interesting to me about that is that experience and that emotional experience you have as a coach when this kind of thing happens. And you had been talking about how you've struggled with like really prioritizing your time and your relationship and just almost like this work-life balance. But do you mind sharing here what kind of mental, physical, and even those emotional tolls coaching does take on you and how you handle those demands or struggles?
It's hard because, man, I live my life very differently. I have a family. They don't get to see me much. I love them to death. But man, I'm so gosh darn passionate about this. And I want to do it all day long. And I will, I, you know, you know, honestly, like I'll be super transparent. I've been to counseling. I've done a lot of different things to be maybe like more in quotations normal. And the thing is, I always come back to how are you going to ask me to be not competitive in a competitive sport? And that's like asking Phil Jackson to say, you know what, you're not going to coach Michael Jordan today. And, you know, I want to coach. And, you know, that doesn't take away my love for my family or my wife. And I do realize that I need to prioritize that time a little bit better. But on the same page, man, my clients give me so much value. They give me so much validation. Honestly, like I could be very much alone and not feel alone. You guys give me so much validation and importance to my life that it's really hard to think about not doing it to the capacity that I do today.
Oh, that's so awesome. I love that. It's amazing what passion can do and what it can drive us to do. And it sounds like you're not only passionate about your athletes, but for them and for their success and being competitive. And there's coaches who have lots of top performing athletes, or like, you're bringing lots of girls to the national stage or at the pro level. So how do you manage your focus or prioritize your time and energy when you do have multiple top performing pros or amateurs?
Well, everyone needs different things. So this is actually a really great topic because even though Lauren and Brittany had very different or very similar physiques, they had very different needs and what they needed throughout the prep. And you know, with Brittany, we were really trying to crack that top five or that at least the second call outs for her. And we were still trying to find her strike zone in the pro league for sure. With Lauren, we had kind of found her strike zone and it was really fine tuning it from there. So what were going to be the final tweaks with Lauren to get her into the top five or get her in the money or get her an Olympia qualification? And I think that what it came down to is my coaching with Lauren, we were pretty set on what we were doing from a food perspective. So a lot of that energy turned into posing, suit color, talking about hair and makeup, and getting feedback from the judges. And then with Brittany, a lot of that came down to what kind of physique changes are we going to make? And then what are we going to do to your diet? One of the great things with Brittany is she had her posing down to a T. So we didn't really waste a whole lot of energy on that. We kind of focused on, well, what's important now? And that was one of the big differences between her from Border Clash to the New York Pro. We came down about 6 pounds. And I had a great conversation with her over a margarita actually after the clash. And I don't think she'll mind that I said this. She was very upset after her placement of the clash. I had a girl literally, I'm going to get emotional. She was crying a little bit and said, I don't know what I'm going to do if I'm not what the judges want anymore. And I thought, oh, heck no, we're not going to let this happen. I said, we're what they want. We just need to bring you into your strike zone. And I said, unfortunately, I think that's going to be us finally trying something that we've never tried before, which was getting way leaner. And my hope with that was that we would lose body fat that was trapped within the muscle tissue. And that would bring down her muscle density. Now, I can't choose where somebody loses body fat from, but I felt like it was the only option that we could go. And she got a much better placement at a very competitive New York Pro. So it's really cool because now going into this season, that's kind of our marker. And now we don't have to waste our time to other shows, bringing a different package. Now we know kind of exactly what we have to do.
Oh, yes, I love that. And I actually appreciate you sharing that story because she shared that story as well from her perspective. So I think that will give listeners an awesome contrast, although there weren't many differences. And I think it's great to hear like your emotion behind that and your emotion behind coaching and helping a competitor find what, you've coined as the striking zone. And I think that's really cool. And I like how you described the difference too between her and someone like Lauren, and how different athletes need different levels of attention based on where they're at. And there are some people who feel that they can't be successful in the sport if they're not natural. And I was curious what your take is on how, if natural athletes have a chance of success in the NPC if they don't have the genetics of, bikini competitor.
Yeah, well, I do think that that genetic component has to be there. I'm going to say something that probably sounds really bad, but you don't want to take a pug and try to turn it into a giraffe, right? Like you would at least want to be a horse first. But we see some pretty wild transformations. So I don't want to discourage anyone because I think that sometimes you get those girls where they just start lifting weights and you can't even fathom what they just did. And you've coached for years. We see that happen all the time. So I would say the biggest thing I would deter people from, I see this today. I see a lot of girls wanting to do wellness that just don't have the legs for wellness. It's a hot and cool division, but a lot of these girls need to kind of stay in bikini. So right now there is something for kind of almost everyone in the sport. Now, when we look at PEDs, I think that there really is something for everyone. And you don't have to get to the pro level, but still go in and compete and have fun with it, and get healthy and make your body the best that it can be. There's plenty of people who are successful that don't have IFBB pro cards or haven't won their classes. And I've had people where they maybe even got last place, but the sport completely changed their lives. But I do think that when we do talk about drug use, people do need to realize if you're pushing that stuff so hard as an amateur, well, what does happen once you're pro and you've already done X, Y, and Z to get there? I think that that kind of gives you a glass ceiling once you graduate up to that next level.
That's very interesting. And I appreciate you sharing your perspective and experience on that because I don't usually broach that topic on the podcast. And I think it's important for Coaches Week. So it's nice to hear your take on it. And I think along with, wondering about success. And I also want to backtrack to what you said about phenomenal athletes being those who keep their head down and put the work in. They're not distracted by shiny object. And I feel like the people who are very patient, like those athletes who are very patient and they enjoy it and it is a lifestyle and it's changed their life, are going to be more likely to become those champion athletes because they like it so much. They love it. They're not like trying to rush it. Um,
Mhm.
so I just thought that that was a cool little connection. But what would you say to people who say politics with teams plays a role in their clients' placing, or that, this sport is so political?
Man, I really hate hearing that stuff. And the reason teams do well is because they're damn good coaches. Um, you know,
Mhm.
Shane Hewley, that dude has more pro cards than I can probably count. And I know not everyone is a fan, but you can't deny what he's doing. And it's not politics. It's just their people are coming in sharp. And there's tons of other coaches that are doing the same thing. And, I think too, sometimes people do join teams because they think that way. Um, I'll tell people this, when you win your pro card, you're going to have a lot of people who support you, and you're going to have 20 or 30 people who try to take it away from you, and they say you didn't look good or you didn't do this. So if you think a team is politically aligned, why would you join that team um, just based on, it gives people a reason to take it away from you. And I actually had a great conversation with a client because she got reached out to by a coach who had a lot of Olympians. But the weird thing about it was they didn't really have any amateurs. So when she had called me and said so and so is trying to recruit me, I said, well, first, I want you to go to their page and tell me if you see any transformations and call me back when you see one. And she never called. I said, you're still looking, right? And she said, that's really funny that you mentioned that. She's like, how's this person only coach Olympians and have no amateurs? I said, well, their Olympians probably do not pay them. And he had said that basically he would get her a pro card and he would align her with the judges. And I just said, do you really want it that way? People are already going to try to take this away from you when you get it. And I said, do you want to be proud of what you did because we hands down won? I said, if you win with this guy, you're going to forever think that you just got handed to you, and you're going to have this precious pro card that so many people want, and it's not going to mean as much to you because the what this person told you went behind it, which is obviously not true. It was just kind of a poaching strategy. But I think that unfortunately some of those rumors happen because of instances like this.
Absolutely. No, such a great story to tell and really puts things in perspectives and gives, I think it's athletes something to consider. And I love how you said, like, do you want to walk away really proud of what you did, not having any question or doubt that you deserved it? Because if people are going to question you, at least you never will question yourself. And that is, really key for feeling empowered by this sport too. And I would love to move into the hypotheticals round. I think this will be a great way to kind of give people in different circumstances an idea into how you might approach it. And some of these I know are going to be very dependent or strange, so feel free to take them however you want. But we'll start with this. If I'm 1 year into competing with a few overall wins under my belt, so I'm doing really well, and my goal is to get my pro card, but I've never stepped on the national stage. And I've been working with the same coach for this whole entire year that I've been competing. So, but I'm looking for a new approach. Why would I hire you?
Yeah. Well, maybe the newer approach isn't so different, but I think one of the differences that someone might hire me is the attention to detail. Paying attention to your health is going to keep you in this for the long run. Your journey to you're competing as a overall athlete regionally, and basically that's what's going to be full of nationals. So now you're up against 40 some girls who are winning shows just like you are. So this could be a long road. It might not be the next year that we get the pro card. It might not even be the next 2 years. But one of the reasons you would want to hire me is just my attention to detail and just my ability to be there for you as a coach, not only just through email and check-ins, but actually being there at the shows with you and basically doing anything in my power to make show day your special day and make you feel like I'm your your corner back there.
That's awesome. I love that. It's a really great perspective on that question I hadn't really heard before. So thank you for that. And now let's say I'm an athlete who's 4 weeks out from a show and I keep telling you, I don't feel ready, but you believe that I am. What's your response to me?
Yeah, well, it is very normal to get in your head. I want to find out where that's manifesting from. Is it that one girl you're following on social media that you think is motivating you, or maybe she motivated you at one time, but maybe now that's became more of a distraction, and we just need to put that energy somewhere else. And if I truly think you're ready, I'm not going to tell you you're ready when you're not. So um, I would also say, well, if you truly don't feel ready, we could wait until 6 weeks to compete. There's plenty of shows, but just hash where that's manifesting from.
Love that. Get to the root.
Yep.
So now let's say someone comes to you wanting to compete or they're considering competing. What's something you want them to know before they commit to it?
Basically, that it's hard. It's not going to be easy, and what you see on Instagram, I think especially one of the things I really like about powerlifting, you never see anyone lifting the weight and smiling or like posting a PR, or they're like lifting a weight with a nosebleed. We never post stuff like that. I think Abchick is the only girl who actually does post about the intensity of the journey. So I'll throw her name out there. But when we go to our pages, we're lifting dumbbells and smiling, and it is not like that to one degree at all.
That's hilarious. I literally had this girl message me this week and she's like, I'm in my first peak week. How are you feeling? Because she knows I'm in peak week too. And I was like, girl, this is the worst peak week I've ever had in terms of like energy and feeling, but like the best prep I've ever had. And she's like, oh my God, like I thought I was the only one struggling. And I'm like, why do we like glamorize it as though it's always perfect? And it's definitely not. Like there's times where it is very challenging and it requires new levels of us. And I think the beauty in bodybuilding is that it does that and it allows us to do that. But it's also like the transparency when we share the reality of it can help people to maybe really decipher if it is the sport for them or how they can make the approach, like you said at the beginning, like even more enjoyable. So with that said, of course, after shows, there's post show. And let's say your client comes to you and says they've rebounded after their show and they just want to reverse it, get back to normal. What do you do from a nutrition and training perspective?
That's tough because it really depends on how much they gained. A lot of times they're just still not hormonally in a great place to go back down. The binging already occurred, we'll say. So my thought is, well, if we try to go back to a calorie level that we already failed at, I don't think it's going to be any different. So what I typically do with clients like that is I like to increase accountability. So I actually might have them check in at the end of the day every day and just say, shoot me a short message for accountability. Let me know how your day went. Did you hit your macros? Did you not? And then we can address that daily, because sometimes if you go a whole week, then you just have weeks upon bad weeks accumulating. This lets you nip things a little bit quicker if people are, having 2 bad days in a row. I like to call this putting the training wheels back on the bike. So we might need to increase macros so they can actually ride the bike again.
Exactly. Like reinforcing that belief or that ability to do things or taking a different approach, like you said, like being adaptable. So now, let's say, and this kind of goes back to like the details. So, if someone's physique is on point and they've been nailing everything in their plan, but their posing is lacking and they haven't been practicing despite your encouragement to do so, do you still put them on stage?
Our regional contests, yes, and national, no. I actually had this happen this year also, with a wellness girl, and she looked phenomenal, but her posing got her like second place, for sure, because from a physique perspective she was definitely on. With that situation though, what I did require was a check-in video of their routine, so then I knew they at least practiced once every time they checked in.
Love that. No, absolutely. I feel like that's a key component is we should be sending posing videos to our coach like that.
Well, and the funny thing is too, like I know girls, like I'm getting 5 photos, but I know they took 20 of them before they sent them over. So I know this girl, I'm like, you at least probably practice that posing routine 5 or 6 times before you actually, you know, cropped out the one that you're like, oh, this one's the best. So I'll send that one to her.
Yeah, exactly. Like I've had girls tell me like they spend, I don't do physique or competition coaching. I help girls with their relationship with food and their body and their goals. But specifically, I've had those girls tell me like they'll spend so much time trying to get the perfect shot, so much time trying to get like that perfect routine or like the best shot to send to their coach for feedback. And I wonder, like for you as a coach, do you ever wish they would send you maybe the obviously the ideal posing, the ideal shot where they're looking their best like they would on stage, but do you ever wonder about like that, those transitions or like the photos that aren't sent to you?
Yeah, well, that is where video can be really important because you're just not going to hide too many flaws when you send a posing video over. And it really is good practice to do that because it's super helpful. And even though I don't define myself as like a posing coach, there will be things that I sometimes tweak with that. Or, Brittany does a lot of the posing for my girls. So sometimes I'll forward that to her and she'll give some feedback. So that's always really helpful.
That's awesome. I love that. It's definitely a team effort, and I think it's cool to have different, eyes on the prize essentially. So let's go into rapid fire round. I'm going to ask you 7 questions. You can answer in one sentence or less, and then we'll pick a few that you want to expand on. Or if in the moment you're like, I want to expand on this one, then we definitely can do that right away.
Deal.
Okay, so waist trainers.
Man, I want to expand on that one.
Go for it.
Okay, so I think that there's some dangers. I think there can be some benefits. Going back to women have some of the harshest pain tolerances I know of. I think that the risk is wearing one too tight, and I think that we have to be careful with that. And I preferably I typically choose not to use them, but I do have clients that choose to and really want to. So my preference would be no, but if a client does decide to use one, I definitely have to have that conversation. Well, how tight are you wearing it? How long are you wearing it for? Etc.
Definitely love that. Okay, now if it fits your macros or meal plans.
Yeah, man, I'd like to expand on that one too.
Choose wisely, Adam.
Oh
I'm
man.
just kidding. No, you can expand on it.
Yeah, so I think that you still have to have flexible structure. So you have to structure your day and plan, even if you're doing macro dieting. There's also a difference in thermic effect of food. So, whole foods, you might have 20% difference in thermic effect. So, for our listeners that don't understand what thermic effect is, basically the energy that your body burns by digesting that food. So, with a meal plan, you could theoretically have foods that aren't whole foods and you're going to miss out on the thermic effect. But I think most people do assume that people that do, if it fits your macros, eat a crap ton of sugar and so forth. So there is a benefit to food quality. So, not to say that calories in, calories out doesn't matter and have an effect, but if you can get a little bit higher of a thermic effect from whole foods, that can make a difference over the course of 20, 25 weeks of dieting.
I'm going to ask you a question about that actually. So when you're giving someone, let's say like a macro based plan, are you guiding them in terms of, hey, try to fill it with these whole foods, or oh, let's focus on a certain percentage, or send me your logs? Like, how do you go about making sure they are getting that
Yeah,
20%
so
benefit?
I usually start from square one. So they actually do fill out their food in a spreadsheet or they send me my fitness pal logs. And I'll do exactly that. I'll just explain the difference of thermic effect of food. And if somebody wants to take advantage of that benefit, they absolutely can, or they can choose to ignore it. And as long as they're making progress, I'm okay with that. Now, towards the end of prep, if things are getting tight and they're having a hard time losing, I might tap them on the shoulder a little bit more and say, well, we could try lowering food, or you could try just going more whole foods and see if that makes a bigger difference. And we kind of discuss things that way.
That's interesting. That's cool. So, how about fasted cardio?
So if they're not a GH user, definitely no, unless like they take thyroid medication and they prefer to do cardio in the morning, because most thyroid meds, if you have like clients that use Synthroid or have any kind of a thyroid deficiency, they might not be allowed to eat breakfast. And if they choose to do cardio in the morning, they might have to do it fasted. But typically, I do prefer fed cardio. You're just going to sweat more and have a little bit of a higher heart rate during your cardio. And typically, you're just going to have a little bit more strut in your step, a little bit better output.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. Like I love doing my cardio fasted, but usually in like improvement season for me, I don't always do that because one, there's not as much to do for it, and two, like you said, I it's that energy and I can put so much into my lift that way as well. But anyway, water cutting.
For certain people, if they're too big, but I won't completely cut it. I'll usually limit it. So I would say that's a no for me.
Okay, and steady state or or high intensity interval training.
I prefer steady state mostly, just because it's less sympathetic and allows people to recover from it a little bit better.
Okay, and then you kind of addressed this earlier, but do you have any recommendations for like best supplements or vitamins for competitors?
I really am a fan of Core. They just have a great detailed science behind the formulas that they put together. One of the best things that I use is the Core Hard, which, we kind of talked about the cortisol levels rising. That has ashwagandha in it, which actually helps you lower cortisol levels. So I just find my clients feel a lot better on that. It also has DIM, which actually gives you a healthy regulation of estrogen. So it's not going to swing it out of range. And, DIM has to have a phospholipid to be absorbed. So it actually has phosphatidylserine. So a lot of the products that claim to do what Core Hard does, they usually don't have a phospholipid in it. So your DIM is typically useless unless it has something to help you absorb it.
Wow, that's really insightful. I appreciate that. I'm sure there's people who will be switching over or checking theirs after hearing that. Now, last rapid fire question. Have you ever fired a client?
I have actually. It was this year. I felt horrible doing it.
Oh, what happened?
Honestly, I got stood up a bunch of times. It was an in-person client. A little backstory on me. I actually, a few years ago, I had a client not show up for a session, and long story short, they did end up actually getting murdered in
Oh,
between the time of seeing me. So that's something that's really like a non-negotiable for me, because it just really brought back like when the person no called no showed, it just really sparked a lot of anxiety. Are they okay, and that started affecting my quality of work for the other clients. That person actually went pro this year, and I was really happy
oh.
to see him go pro. But at the same time, I just knew that it wasn't good for me. It wasn't good for my people who were actually showing up for me.
I like that consideration. It's like your mental health needs to be a priority so you can show up for your clients at a high level. And if anything sacrifices that, it's not fair and it doesn't satisfy like your intention as a coach. So I think that's, very appreciated. And I appreciate you sharing that with us too. I actually even was hoping I could expand on one out of my own curiosities.
Yeah.
So with steady state or hit, you said you prefer steady state because it's less likely to be like sympathetic. So
Yes.
when someone's doing steady state and you're guiding them to do that, how are you making sure, or how do you make sure that they're going to get the most out of that cardio session, or how do you track to be sure that they are?
Well, the first thing is time, and then you can talk about intensities, but again, I don't want them to be so intense because you can start getting really, really sympathetic if you go too hard in your steady state. So you do want to like maybe provide some heart rate ranges, which are kind of discussed in our startup documents. But the hard thing with that is when someone's starting your program, it's really easy to not absorb all of the information. And that's always the hard thing as a coach. Are you over delivering information or under doing it? So you really want to almost give your clients a curriculum within their emails to you with just kind of re-bringing up these topics, or I like to say reopening the door, because we do discuss these things, but it is easy to forget those at some point.
Yeah, okay. That really expands and kind of goes back to what you had said earlier about communication and keeping those doors open for communication. So I'm really glad that you touched on that again. And before we kind of close things out, I would love to know if there's anything I didn't ask you that you think I should have asked.
I don't think so. This was awesome.
Oh, good. I'm so glad that you liked it. I've enjoyed it so much too. And I would love for everybody to be able to tag you with their main takeaways or maybe with some follow-up questions as well. So can you let everybody know maybe what your Instagram handle is or your website or, both?
Yeah. If anyone has any questions, they can definitely reach out. They can DM me on Instagram. I'm definitely always open to sending messages back. I'll usually through Instagram, like send an audio message and be pretty elaborate in my response. So I'll definitely provide some value with any questions that people might have.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that I put your Instagram link in the show notes page. So to everybody listening, that's always on celestial.fit/podcast. You're going to see a category section, coaches series. You're also going to see Adam's name, which lucky for him is at the very top of the alphabet. So you should be able to see that right away at the categories section. Of course, if you're listening to this right away, this episode is going to be at the very top. And I want to remind you that on the show notes page, there's full episode timestamps breaking down exactly what we discussed when. So if you're like, when did he say what happens with the dim and the sub? Okay, you'll be able to find that and go back to that exact moment so you can retake notes if you're looking for it. So Adam, thank you so much for all your incredible insight and experiences and just sharing so openly with us. I really appreciate it.
You are so welcome. It was a pleasure to be on here.
Oh, of course, absolutely. And I hope that you all listening have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, or everywhere in the world while you're listening to this episode. Just make it happen.